I mean, even just getting a driver's license, you were there so long. I mean, you'd have to get everything prepared again, even to be able to fill out your taxes. Like you were saying, is so many
Yeah.
things that we just do that you slowly integrate to. That was all taken from you. They just throw you out, and you got to figure it out.
Yeah, I didn't have my birth certificate. I didn't have my social security card, any of that. So before I got out, I had to get in touch with the state of California. I was born in California. I had to get my birth certificate. Then I had to get my social security card. It was rough. And then I didn't know how to go about getting an ID when I got out. I had to go and ask people. And some people won't take that initiative. They won't feel comfortable asking about something that simple. But I was pretty determined not to go back. And in Kansas, we have an offender registration for almost everything. Some states have a sex offender registration. Kansas, we register people for drug offenses, sex offenses, and violent offenses. And according to the Offender Registration Act, I had to have state issued ID or I was going back to prison, and I needed to get it within 3 days. So, and it's a felony charge. So, uh, you know, I was kind of just tossed into deep waters and had to sink or swim.
I've never heard of that. I've known some states, they have the felon box on a job application or something. Like if you ever served a prison term, I've seen those. I've never heard that they make you register. That, I mean, you've done your time. That just seems like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, the Kansas Offender Registration Act. You might be interested in looking into that. That's a rough one.
I
But
have a bit of a question about that. So they require you to get a state issued ID, a
mhm,
government issued ID, but
yes,
they don't give you one.
right,
They're the
that is
state.
correct.
Why? This is just to hurt you.
It seems like it sometimes. It seems like they set you up for failure sometimes.
They are
Uh,
the state. I mean, it's the state prison system. Can't they just print it out in the office?
They
well,
can. No, that's the thing. They probably could. They could. They could. It wouldn't even be that expensive to put systems in like that. Or like when they
it wouldn't
release
be.
you, they drive you over to to wherever they do print it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
wouldn't be that expensive.
it wouldn't be that hard at all. And even if they print it out on a piece of paper, like they give you your temporary driver's license, it takes a couple of minutes. It's not hard to do.
Uh,
And you still have your inmate ID when you get out, but for whatever reason, it's not acceptable as real legal ID. So,
But it's an ID and a state issued.
yeah. So,
That's a state
I,
issued ID from like all
yeah.
definitions except the legal one.
Well, in Kansas, if you're a registered offender, you have to have a special ID. We have an ID with a gold star on it that says that you're a registered offender. And it doesn't matter if you're a violent offender, sex offender, drug offender, or what. If you're a registered offender of any sort, you have to have a state issued ID and it has to have their gold star on it. And to get the gold star, you have to go to a full service DMV. We have a lot of areas out here that are pretty remote and a lot of DMVs don't do full service, so you got to drive to a bigger city. But then again, how do you drive? You're
Yeah.
out without a license.
Catch
You're living in the middle
22s.
of nowhere, but you have to find a way to get there to get your ID or you're looking at a new felony charge.
Does that ever does that requirement ever expire? I mean, do you after 10 years are you able to?
It expires for some people, but because my felony was a severity level 1 violent felony, I have to register for the rest of my life. The
That's
only
absurd.
alternative to that would be to go to a state that doesn't have a violent offender registration, which I'm
Gosh.
seriously looking at because the risk isn't worth it. If the Offender Registration Act is ridiculous, their stipulations are far from reasonable. If you update your phone number, for example, let's say I change my phone number today, I have to report to the sheriff's office within 72 hours and update my registration. If I fail to do so within 72 hours, I am looking at a new felony charge. okay, well, what if the person who does the registration is sick? Well, then it's still on me. It's not on them. It's my responsibility to register. If I leave my house for more than 3 days at a time, if I leave my residence for more than 3 days at a time, if I want to go on a trip or something, I have to file a 30-day itinerary with, well, I have to file an itinerary 30 days in advance with the KBI in Kansas. Just, there's so many things. I have to tell them where I work, what I drive, what my license plate number is, where I park my car, all that stuff. And you have to stay on top of all of it, even screen names, email addresses, stuff like that. You have to record all of that on your registration. So if I wanted to get a new email or a new social media account, I have to check with them.
What gets me is that means if you like forget your wallet with your ID and you go off somewhere, that's a felony apparently.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah, it
like
is.
if you forget your driver's license, it's just a long hassle for like to get your license to prove that that you're allowed to drive.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If I lost my driver's license, I would not only have to worry about the Offender Registration Act, but I also have to find a full service DMV where I can get that gold star.
Gosh. Now, if someone was coming from another state to Kansas and they'd been convicted in another state, would they still have to do that to live in Kansas?
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
And they're not always notified. Um, if you committed a, for example, if you committed the same crime that I was convicted for in another state and you came into Kansas, you would have to register. That falls under the Kansas Offender Registration Act. And they don't notify you of that when you come to Kansas.
So you're breaking the law and you don't even know it. That's, oh my gosh.
Right.
I can't, if they really wanted to sit down and design all these barriers to stopping someone from being able to succeed after they're released, they couldn't come up with a better plan than that.
The Offender Registration Act has for a lot of people. There are a lot of people in prison in Kansas for registration violations, and it's stupid. That's a very dumb reason to go to prison on a new sentence. And I think it's a level 7 personal felony, which it's a personal felony, which I don't understand why that is what it is, but it is. But if you end up doing time because you change your phone number, that's stupid. That's the opposite of, doing something about recidivism. That you're creating a bigger problem than you had in the first place.
Yeah, that needs to be seriously investigated and exposed. That's absurd. I wonder which other states have anything similar.
Is that even recidivism at that point? Because you didn't do anything that would be wrong for a normal person.
Right. Yeah, that's, in my opinion, it's very unconstitutional. It infringes upon a lot of freedoms that other people have.
Privacy rights, yeah, and
Yeah,
sort. Search and see. You could make a Fourth Amendment argument on that one.
yeah.
Illegal search and seizure.
And
Yeah.
think of the expense of trying to keep someone locked in prison, the amount of money that they spend per year on people with violations like that. What else should they be doing with their money?
Right. And it's not just that, they're also paying staff that is just for registration. They have a person at the sheriff's office in every county whose sole responsibility is to do offender registrations. They have a lot of stuff in place, their systems, their tracking systems, stuff like that, their database. That is all for the offender registration.
Yeah.
And
Whole
then
infrastructure.
you talk about that added to the people that we're sending back to prison for stupid stuff. I mean, I don't know what the cost is, but I imagine it's pretty high.
I wonder if that the Secretary of Corrections, I wonder if he maybe his brother owns the company that does the background checks or something.
Maybe. He's no longer the secretary, though. They got rid of him after that whole fiasco. But the Registration Act, I have a lot of pretty bad feelings about it. I don't like, being controlled like that, and I have to update every 3 months. It's quarterly, so I have to go down there and register, and you have to pay to register every 3 months. I have to pay $20. Uh, so I disagree with it. I don't think it's right. As far as I know, there's only 3 states that have a violent offender registration: Kansas, Oklahoma, and Montana. I don't know if that's still the case. I looked it up a long time ago, but I think those are the only 3 states: uh, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Montana. I don't think it would fly in a lot of states, though.
No. And gosh, that's just, and so many violent offenses have low recidivism. Really, the majority of people being arrested after they're released were people who were committing drug-related offenses, property offenses to feed a drug habit, some of these more endemic issues that got them involved in it. With violence, it's so situational. It was someone and somebody else, and that what's the chances that's going to happen again, as long as it wasn't gang related. Violence is actually a low recidivism type of offense, but I just had never, you just taught me something that has made me really mad. It makes me want to go do research on it.
I just Googled it. It's 5 states that have a violent offender registry. It's Montana, Oklahoma, Kansas, Illinois, and Indiana.
Illinois.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Indiana,
the other 4 are in bold, but Illinois is not. I don't know why.
That's weird. I'll look it up. That's geez. Now, I did have another question for you. Is because in prison, people who are very young are sometimes taken advantage of or treated unfairly by the other prisoners. They don't get a lot of respect. And so you were very young when you went in.
Right.
But then your offense was against someone who was suspected being a child molester. They also really hate child molesters. So you probably had some respect just going in because of the nature of your offenses. Was that kind of offset by your age?
Sometimes it kind of balanced it out, I had my share of difficulties, but like when I was going into RDU, I talked about this in a video. When you first come in, it's a lot like you see in the movies. You have people yelling at you, screaming, people trying to intimidate you, oh, you got a pretty mouth, or, whatever. And I walked into the cell house in RDU and I sat down and I started eating my lunch. I was the only person out of my cell because I just got there and they didn't have a cell open for me. And everybody started yelling at me, oh, boys, we got a youngin'. And they started in with the hazing. Well, one of them said, hey, what are you in here? What are you in here for? You look kind of young, And I said, well, I kidnapped and shot a pedophile. And everybody started cheering and clapping. And, for the next year or so, I had a lot of respect because of that. People would say, hey, who's that guy? And he shot a chomo. And so a lot of people wouldn't mess with me. But then there were some inmates in El Dorado. El Dorado is a place where they have Supermax. A lot of times guys will get out of Supermax and they'll go to general population in El Dorado. So anywhere in the state of Kansas, if you end up in Supermax, you're going to go to El Dorado. It doesn't matter what prison you started out in, and then you'll probably end up in GP in El Dorado. Well, because of that, there's a lot of sexual predators in El Dorado. Guys who committed rapes in other prisons went to Supermax and they got out in GP in El Dorado. And it's not cool to be, young in a prison full of sexual predators. And that's what I dealt with. There were some guys that were straight up predators, and it was tough. It was tough navigating those waters, and I did it. I got through it, but a lot of people didn't. There were a lot of people that were preyed upon and victimized, and luckily I wasn't one of those guys, but it could have been very different.
You're so eloquent and clearly have just really good insight into all these things. And I've interviewed, I don't know, probably like at least 3,000 people who serve time in a jail or a prison. And so often they don't want to talk about it. And so it makes it really difficult to kind of get at the issues and understand it.
Right.
I've learned so much from your videos and from talking to you. You really need to write a book. You could write a book and about any of these topics, just pick one or two, or you could go in depth and tell the whole story. And it would be extremely useful for people to understand, because so many people's stories don't get told. Many of them wouldn't have your education level to be able to write a detailed book about it. Others just don't want to talk about it, or people wouldn't believe them. And with you, you've gone so in depth, and you have this just really balanced approach of looking at the whole thing from everybody's perspective. It's a really, it's a great resource for people like me who've never served any prison terms, but we want to understand it to make them better places. And so you have to write a book. I'm just saying that you should dedicate 30 minutes a day.
I will do that.
Please do.
I will do that.
And I will assign it in my classes. My students here, they would probably like a copy too. So every time I teach this class for the rest of my life.
I'm glad that it's been so helpful for people. My videos have meant a lot to me, especially the positive feedback, and I'm very grateful for all the people that watch my videos and give me some positive feedback and tell me, hey, this helped me, because that makes it feel like all that time wasn't a waste. It wasn't for nothing. I can say that some good came out of it.
I feel just genuinely sorry for you that you had to miss out on those years of your life, that you were young. There were things that you could have been doing instead, and what other things would you have gone on to? But you made the most of just a horrible situation, and you got a doctorate in theology. I mean, how many other people could ever make that happen? It's really impressive. It's like going to school is a great thing, but going to school in prison is just even so many more challenges. It's just something you should be really proud of.
Thank you. Yeah, there were a lot of bullies at my school. But I sometimes I think about the things that I might have missed out on, and it is a little bit of a downer. It kind of makes me sad sometimes, but I think about what I went through and what it taught me about people, what it taught me about myself, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. I really wouldn't. I don't know if I would have come out of it the same, if I would be 30 years old and have the same perspectives that I have right now, and the same values that I have now. For a lot of people, prison is a very negative thing, and it can be a very negative thing. It can be a very negative place. It can be violent. It can rip your heart apart. I'm not saying that it's a nice place, but it can teach some very, very valuable things. So even for the hardships and the obstacles, I'm very grateful for all of it.
It is, I know people that have all the advantages in life and they're not happy. They don't appreciate what they have, and maybe seeing things as prison life is just so completely different than all the joys and things you can experience now that you're starting a family. You got a baby on the way. You're going to enjoy those days so much that
Right.
that you'll have something to contrast it to, whereas other people really take it all for granted.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful out here. Before I got arrested, my father was a truck driver, and I went all around the country, and I never liked the scenery in Kansas. Hated it. Flat, just fences and fields, right? But I was in Lansing behind the walls. So there's 30-foot limestone walls. You can't see any scenery. No. And I got out of Lansing, and all of a sudden, Kansas was this beautiful thing. And it's like that with everything. I was with my brother Kevin. I call him my brother. He's not my blood brother, but he's a great person. And we lived together in El Dorado for about 5 years. We were driving down a dirt road. Nothing special about it. We're just in this old beat up Ford Bronco driving it down a dirt road. No AC. We're both sweating. But I looked over at him and I said, hey, look at us now. And he immediately recognized it. Like we were just living the high life. Like we just went to the casino and hit the jackpot. Because for us, it kind of is a jackpot.
That's amazing. That's you know, before the class wraps up, and to give all the students a chance to type any questions they have in the chat, do you think you could? I know it's sensational, and you have 2 videos on it on your channel, but do you think you could tell us that you were in prison with the BTK serial killer, who was really famous there for a little while, infamous, and you didn't have a lot of interactions with him, but could you explain that to my students who haven't watched your videos?
Yeah, Dennis Rader. I believe he went to prison in 2004 or early 2005, and he was in Supermax, which is in El Dorado, which is where I did most of my time. I think I did 7 or 8 years in El Dorado. And I was an electrician in El Dorado. I also worked in the infirmary for a while. And so we would go back into Supermax to change light bulbs and things like that. And I saw him on more than one occasion. We never talked in depth. We never were buddies or had any conversations. It was more of a, hey, how you doing? What's going on? But I did talk to him a couple of times. And the same thing when I worked in the infirmary. Uh, when they have a guy who's a Supermax inmate and he's sick, a lot of times they'll bring him back to the infirmary. They'll have an escort of, 2 SST officers. They'll have him cuffed up and they'll escort him back into the infirmary. So there were several occasions when I was working in the infirmary and he was on his way back there, and I would say, hey, how you doing and whatnot. But he was a different individual. He was polite and respectful, I guess. He was well spoken, but he seemed to be a very cold and distant person. And a lot of the other guys that were on maintenance crews had problems with him. They would go work on a cell. Now, when you go to Supermax and you're working on a cell where a high profile inmate is housed, like BTK, they'll take him out of the cell and they'll go lock him in the shower, and then they'll let the maintenance guys come in and work on the cell. Well, when he was being escorted to the showers, a lot of times he would say, hey, thank you for fixing my lights or whatever was wrong. Help yourself. I got some coffee in my locker. Just help yourself. And so the maintenance guys would grab some coffee out of there. And then when they were on their way out and they were putting BTK back in the cell, as soon as he got in the cell, he would start banging on the door, basically saying that the maintenance guys stole coffee out of his cell. And when there's an accusation like that, they take you over to a strip out room and they strip search you. And so I think it was his way of having some power over somebody else's life, where he could humiliate them and make them feel miserable. But it's what he did. And a lot of people don't like him because of that. In addition to his crime, he did some very, very horrific things, very brutal things, destroyed families, destroyed lives. And, he's a Supermax inmate. He's probably always going to be a Supermax inmate. If they ever put him in general population, for his crimes alone, someone will try to kill him in population, no doubt. But if you add to that the fame and notoriety of the guy, someone's going to kill him just to make a name for themselves. There are a lot of inmates who would love to be known as the guy who killed the BTK killer.
Gosh, it is interesting to think these high profile cases that you walk in there and you're famous. On the one hand, some people might be afraid of you because they might think you're unhinged, but other people would see you as a target. It is fascinating. We read all these kinds of books and stories about the hierarchies and the convict code and how not to snitch and all these things. And it makes you wonder, it's in a way, every time I've been to a prison, it seems like a lot of, really, I get like a kind of a hospital vibe, that there's a lot of people that don't want to be there, but they're usually getting along just fine, playing cards, watching TV, and or be involved in programs. And really, if they weren't wearing uniforms, you wouldn't know. You might think you're on maybe in the military or college campus, young guys So it is fascinating to hear all these inside stories of just the interactions people have.
Right. Yeah. You know, a lot of guys in prison are just normal people. They did something stupid. I'm not going to say it was a mistake, it was a bad choice, but, you know, they're not crazy. They're not, you know, cold blooded killers. They're not serial killers. They're not rapists. They did something stupid at one point in their life and they want to go home. So, you know, you'll sit out and play cards with people, you'll watch football games together, you'll cook together, you'll go lift weights together, or play music together. You can have a fairly normal existence, you know, given the context of the environment, you know, for being in prison. It's not all what you see in movies and on TV.
Yeah, and I will say really enjoyed your music, heavy metal. I haven't listened to heavy metal in a long time, so it
Thank
was kind of good to, and I get some definitely some Slayer vibes from it. It's great, and you're just very talented. And
thank
then
you.
you have a few songs that are kind of acoustic, and
Yeah.
and is there are you just kind of branching out, or you just feel like you want to write a song that fits your mood at a certain time?
Definitely because I feel like writing something that fits my mood. I like to play a little bit of everything. I don't just stick to metal. And having that ability to do, you know, diverse styles, it allows me to express myself a lot better than just being one dimensional with my music. And I guess I kind of owe that to the environment. Like I said, we would have guys at concerts who needed a guitarist. I might find myself playing something that's of a Latin influence or playing classic rock or country or something that's Christian or whatever. If people needed me to play music for them, I was happy to help because it was a new challenge. And I always liked the challenge of doing something new.
You know that you did just kind of remind me of a question that I thought I would ask you. Is in Kansas, you probably have a higher than normal Native American population compared to other states. So all the states I visited, every now and then they'll say something like, "There's the race-based gangs, white, black, Hispanic," and then you get some people in another group who don't really fit with the others, but they'll kind of mind their own business. And then they always have a special distinction for Native American prisoners. Kansas probably has a larger population because it's near the different tribal areas. Did
Right.
you have any people in there that you were with who were Native American?
I never had a Native American cellmate, but I knew a lot of guys who were Native. We had a big Native American call out. Call out in Kansas is basically a term we use to describe a appointment. You know, it could be a religious call out or a mental health call out or something like that. But the Native American call out was very big, and in just about every prison in Kansas I went to, they have their, I believe it's a powwow that they have on Sunday, and then they have smudge every day at a certain time. And that was really cool. I had some really good friends that were part of the Native American call out, and I enjoyed learning about their views and stuff like that. And I enjoyed how they lived. You know, they had a very, very cool, respectful lifestyle, and I really, you know, I could vibe with that. But the problem is, as with other religious groups in Kansas and in prison in general, um, you'll have guys that want to turn it into a gang thing. And you'll have the natives, but then you'll also have people who are in Mexican gangs, like the Sureños and Norteños and Aztecas, and they will use the Native American call out to, you know, run their gang. It gives them a time they can all be out of their cell and they can kind of plan stuff out. They can talk about what moves they're making or people that need to be taken out or how they need to solve problems or bring drugs in or get rid of product or whatever. But that's something that happens in a lot of religious call outs. And I don't think the true Native American guys who were in it for the right reasons, the guys who were there because that was their faith, that was their spirituality, that was their lifestyle. I don't think they really appreciated that. Sometimes it would result in some conflicts on the yard. Usually it got pretty violent when something like that went down. But yeah, it's just the world that you have to live in sometimes.
Just to give you another idea for a second book, after you write the one about your story, you should definitely use your training in theology to write a book about how prisoners work with different religious groups and what it actually means to them. You would have better insight than a lot of people. Whenever I have read a few books like that for people who are serving life sentences, and then religion is their only thing they have to, really they may never get out of prison, but they're looking forward to an afterlife. And all of those books were written by usually Baptist or Catholic ministers who were chaplains. And they have a slant to it, and they're not really assessing it the way that because I want to compare all the groups. I don't want to just look at one. You could do that. You have the insight, you have the training. That would be a great book.
I think I would probably enjoy writing that more than my personal story, because it always fascinates me to learn what other people believe and think about the dynamics of that and what it entails, the different theological concepts. But you're absolutely right in saying that for a lot of people, that's all they have, and it is their lifestyle. It's how they define themselves. If you take away somebody's, house, their cars, their job, everything that they've ever known, their community on the streets, and you put them in a place like a prison, you have four pair of clothes, you have a bunk, and you might have some electronics, but you don't have much. And your spirituality and your lifestyle, they go hand in hand, and they can really define who you are and give you meaning in that environment. It's huge.
Well, I do what you love. If that book sounds like a better idea, a good use of your time, I guarantee there's a lot of people who study prisons who would love to read something like that. So it's you can get the word out. But my class is unfortunately over. So if you see that the numbers are disappearing, that's people who have to leave, go to another class or something. But they've been very shy. They didn't ask you any questions, except Ryan usually helps me out in my interviews. Thanks, Ryan.
I do appreciate you guys listening.
I do enjoy this sort of thing, honestly.
Well, Ryan, I appreciate your questions. They were very good. I appreciate your feedback as well.
And I'll send you some emails. I'll definitely keep in touch, and please work on your books and get back to me as soon as you can. But I'll send you. Maybe we can have another chat where we talk about that chapter I was telling you about for the book I'm writing, because I think I need some help, and you might be the best person to help me with it.
I would be more than happy to help. I would love to be involved with something like that. And anytime, if your class needs some insight on something, I would be happy to come back and do another one of these with y'all.
Great.
Really
in the fall, I'm teaching.
Sorry.
I'm teaching the class again in the fall, and I'm sure there'll be a group of students. Who knows? Maybe we can bring you out as a guest speaker. The university I work at in Massachusetts, they sometimes fly people out. And if you could get some vacation time, come on up to New State.
Yeah, I just need to know 30 days in advance so I can check with the registration office.
Oh, I hate that. You got to get out of there.
I would be happy to do that, though.
Thank you so much, and good luck. Congratulations on the baby. And
Thank you.
I'll be watching your YouTube channel. Hopefully you got at least 40 subscribers today. So,
Hey, that'd be great. I appreciate the support. I love my viewers. They're some of the best. But it's been great being here with you guys. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you. We really appreciate it too. We'll see you on your channel.
See you later. Right Nation!